Hello and happy holiday season. Welcome back to the Pandemic Pinup Happy Hour. We are doing the 12 cocktails of Christmas. We've done 3 every Sunday for the past 2 Sundays. This would make the 3rd. And we'll have 3 more to finalize the series next Sunday. And that way you'll have 12 cocktails to pick from for your holiday festivities, whether you are solo at home or having small gatherings, or if you're spending time with family or a loved one, you will have cocktails that you can make to drink. Today, we are making some very interesting cocktails, at least I think so, but I am biased because I made these recipes. But we're going to be using some ingredients that some of you might be familiar with and some you may not be. All of the cocktails today are shaken. We have done quite a few hot beverages and stirred cocktails throughout the 12 cocktails of Christmas. So I thought we would take it back to the shaking because it seems to be very popular. People like to shake their cocktails. I feel like it makes you feel like you worked and earned it. Or maybe if you're a home bartender, it makes you feel more legit. But quite honestly, if you put alcohol in a beverage, you are your own bartender. So you don't need to shake your cocktails to be considered a professional. But sometimes shaking is a very good thing. Usually if it has some kind of juice or citrus in it, it's a very good method to use. Helps aerate that cocktail, really brighten up those flavors. But today we're going to start with something I call Dove Season. And I call it that because it's kind of a tribute to the fact that it is actually dove season in Texas, where I am. But also because it's a play on a Paloma cocktail, which is a very classic tequila cocktail that many people are familiar with, kind of like a margarita, but with grapefruit juice. So this Dove or Paloma style cocktail is going to stick with that tequila, but you are free to use any tequila you want. If you like silver, if you like añejo, if you like reposado, use whatever. I'm going to be using a reposado today. I like aged tequilas. Silver's good, but I like a little more oomph in my spirits. I like things that are like nice and brown and rounded and aged. I just find them much more interesting. So for this cocktail, we're going to start off with 2 ounces of tequila. Make sure it's a nice hefty pour. That way everybody is in the holiday spirit by the time they finish this cocktail. And this has quite a bit of different juices in it. So like I mentioned, the traditional Paloma has grapefruit juice. So we are going to be adding grapefruit juice just to keep it a little bit classic. We're going to add 1 whole ounce of grapefruit juice. And then we're going to add a 1/2 ounce of tart cherry juice. Now, if you can't find tart cherry juice, then you might be able to just find regular cherry juice that's kind of sweet. And in that case, you're going to dial back the sweetener in this cocktail. If you have trouble finding things, please feel free to reach out. All recipes are modifiable based on what you're able to find. So if you're unsure of how to do that, just let me know. So a 1/2 ounce of that tart cherry juice. And then we're going to use a 1/4 ounce of lime juice. And if you've tuned in before, you know that I believe fresh is best. It just doesn't have that aftertaste that some of those pre-bought lemon and lime juices have because they're pasteurized, so they have a weird funk at the very end. Plus, they give a lot of people heartburn. So if you can do fresh, fresh is better. And then at the beginning of every week for the classes that are coming the following Sunday. And if you haven't joined the Pandemic Pinup group on Facebook, please do so. But the flyers also get posted to the Underground Cooking Club page, which is where we're streaming this live currently. And all of the recipes for syrups and infusions and things like that are on those flyers. So one of the ones for this week was a ginger simple syrup. And we're going to use a 1/4 ounce of that. Now, here's one of those examples where when you can't find fresh, sometimes you just do what you can. This syrup is much better when made with fresh ginger, but I was unable to find any this week. So I ended up using a little bit of powdered ginger to kind of still give it that flavor. It's not as bright and fresh and beautiful, but it's still gingery and still complements the drink. So just to recap, we have our 2 ounces of tequila, our 1/2 ounce of tart cherry juice, our 1/4 ounce of lime juice, 1 ounce of grapefruit juice, and a 1/4 ounce of that ginger syrup. So once that's all in your shaker, we're going to add some ice. And then we're going to give it a little shake. And you want to shoot for, I don't know, give or take 10 to 15 seconds. You want it to get nice and cold and diluted. I always like to give approximates when it comes to shaking time because I don't know what kind of ice you're using, and not all ice is created equal. Some have more surface space, some are softer than others, so they dilute faster. It's kind of hard to tell, but a good approximate is going to be about 10 to 15 seconds. So I'm going to be serving this in this really pretty vintage coupe that I have, or goblet glass doohickey. I love vintage glassware, it's kind of my thing. So I'm going to strain this into my cocktail glass. You can strain this into a highball, into a rocks glass if you want. Entirely up to you. And I'm going to top it off with just a little bit of soda. If you wanted to add a little extra oomph to the cocktail, zhuzh it up a bit, you could totally use champagne. If you don't like club soda, you could use sparkling water. There's a lot of flavored ones out there. A grapefruit one would complement this very nicely. You could also just use like a tonic if you're really into tonic. They have a bunch of flavors out on the market currently as well. So that is Dove season. I'm going to garnish it with some dried cherries. I feel like dried fruits just really say winter to me because they speak to the fact that we try to preserve a lot of our earlier harvests so that we can continue to enjoy those flavors as the seasons change. So I'm garnishing it with dried cherries, but feel free to use a grapefruit peel or slice fresh cherries. I saw those in my grocery store the other day. But that, guys, is Dove season. And it's really, really good. I know it doesn't mean a lot coming from me because I make the cocktail, but I encourage you to try this at home. If you like margaritas, think of this as a wintry margarita. If you like palomas, think of it as like a very bougie paloma. But it's tasty. Now, if you use silver tequila, you're going to be able to taste a lot more of the notes of the juices. When you're using an aged tequila, those juices have to play with the flavors in your aged tequila. So I find that to be very pleasing and interesting on the palate when I'm drinking it. But if you would like it to be juicier instead of more alcohol forward, then you can definitely use the silver tequila. You could also dial back the amount that you're using. So I'm using 2 ounces, but you could use 1.5 ounces if that makes you more comfortable. So for our next cocktail, we're going to make something called the Yuki-Onna, which I really hope y'all find out what that is. Really cool. Do some research online. It's a really neat Japanese spirit that has to do with the winter. There's all these legends and stories that are fascinating to read about this unearthly being, if you will, that kind of roams in different regions of Japan way back in the day. And depending on the encounters that this spirit might have with different people, different things happen. So there's one where this man wants to marry the spirit. Apparently it appeared in female form. And then she kept being encouraged to take a bath. And she was just not having it. And she got forced into this bath and then melted into just tiny little icicles that are everywhere. She just floated away and was no more. And then there was another one where she hugged a child, and then the child was so warm that she just kind of poof into like a flurry of snow. But it's a kind of a cool little thing. So I named the cocktail this because it is kind of clear and pale in color, similar to snow, but I'm also using a Japanese plum wine, also known as umeshu. And I just thought it was really neat to find out more about how other cultures celebrate the change of the seasons and the winter and other holidays. So that is my tribute to Japan. And for this cocktail, again, we're going to use a shaker. And you're going to need 1.5 ounces of plum wine. There are a lot of different plum wines on the market. I've sampled quite a few. I can't really say if I have a favorite. I have found them all very nice. They're usually sweet and fruity, which who doesn't like sweet and fruity sometimes? They're not all the same though. Some are wines with added plum flavor. Some are plums that have been turned into wine. So this particular one is one I've been really wanting to try for a while because it comes with the little plums or the umes in the bottle, which to me just says snacks, I think, when this is over. I'm really hoping they're tasty because they've been soaking in wine. But yes, this is the Choya brand. I'm not saying you have to buy this brand. This is just the one I have, the one I worked with. I thought it was a really nice pairing with the rest of these ingredients. So I'm going to use 1.5 ounces of that, pour it into my shaker. And then just because it is the holidays, most people like cocktails that have a little more alcohol content in them just because it helps you stay warm, because it raises your blood pressure a little bit. Plus, you're feeling festive and you like to feel kind of giddy, then you can add in a little extra kick of alcohol. You don't have to. You could do this without the vodka that I'm adding. But I'm going to add just a 3/4 ounce, nothing crazy, just to kind of bring up that alcohol content a little bit. You could use a different spirit if you really wanted to. I chose vodka because it has a cleaner flavor profile, so you really get the plum wine coming through, which was my entire focus for this cocktail. But play around with it. You could use a sake. You could use a silver tequila, a silver rum, an agricole rum would probably be really interesting in this cocktail. Now that I think about it, I'm probably going to make one of those afterwards and see if I like it better. But we have 1.5 ounces of our umeshu, which is the plum wine, a 3/4 ounce of the vodka, and then we're going to use a 1/4 ounce of fresh lemon juice and a 1/4 ounce of rosemary simple syrup. And I just thought that the herbal tones of rosemary, because they have kind of like a resinous, piney kind of note to them, really, really complemented the plum. Thought it was a really nice pairing. So that's it. 1.5 ounces of the plum, 3/4 ounce of the vodka, 1/4 ounce of the lemon, 1/4 ounce of the rosemary, ice up, and then shake. Rogue ice cube. All right. You don't really have to shake this too terribly much, about 10 seconds, give or take. Now, I'm going to be topping this off with soda. Again, you could use anything. I wouldn't really necessarily go the route of a champagne just because you would have to really carefully choose your champagne because the umeshu is a sweeter wine. We've added in some other, citrus and some other sweet to kind of keep it in the same realm where it started. And if you choose something like a Prosecco, which is a sweet wine, or a Brut Champagne that is very dry, it's going to alter the cocktail. Not necessarily in an unpleasant way. It's just not going to be as clean. You're going to have a lot more competition flavor-wise. So I chose to go with club soda. So I'm going to strain this directly into a champagne flute with no ice, just straining it up. That's what that term means, if you've never heard it before, or if you have and didn't know what it meant. To strain something up or to serve something up in a coupe, cocktail glass, champagne flute means without ice. So top off with some bubbles. I don't know what it is about bubbles, they just feel festive. Now you can do this without the bubbles. It's a really nice cocktail on its own. However, if you are going to do that, I would serve it over an ice cube, one of those big fat ones that a lot of people use in like a whiskey glass, just because it'll keep it cold without over diluting it, but it will add a small amount of dilution as you drink it, which is kind of what I'm doing by adding the soda. And then to garnish it, I'm going to use a really pretty looking rosemary sprig just directly in my glass. See how simple that is? It looks super pretty. That is the Yuki-Onna. Cheers. I think in Japanese it's kanpai, maybe? Kanpai. I don't want to butcher it. Let's hope that's the right culture. If it is kanpai, if it's not, cheers. And I like garnishing this with the rosemary because it hits you immediately. Like the aroma of rosemary is so strong. You could garnish this with a lot of other things. You could do a lemon twist. You could do plums. You could do candied sugar plums and turn it into like a Japanese sugar plum cocktail. I just really like to enhance those herbal notes because it makes your brain think that it's going to be a little bit savory, and then you have a little bit of a surprise on the palate because it's tart and sweet and savory at the same time. So it just makes it more of an enjoyable experience, more well-rounded in my opinion. But feel free to garnish with whatever you want or not at all. Some people just feel like garnishes are unnecessary. They make me feel fancy, so I like to use them. And then for my last cocktail today, which we've been blazing through this, haven't we? Maybe I've been going a little fast, but I feel like that's fine because today I have no one to chat with. It's just me and the interweb people. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I try to keep an eye on the Facebook chat at all times. These get uploaded to the YouTube channel, The Chef with Red Shoes, and therefore if you have questions, you can comment there. If you are watching, you are part of the Chandler Tomeko hotline, which means any question is acceptable. No question is too dumb or too weird or too off the wall. If I don't know the answer, I will be more than happy to find out for you. So for this last cocktail, I'm going to be very frank. I make my own apple moonshine every Christmas. So it's not apple pie moonshine, it's spiced apple moonshine. I use a lot of mulling spices, which have clove and allspice, star anise, some cinnamon, some dried orange peel. And then I add in a little bit of some allspice syrup. So it's spiced, but it's not apple pie. I really like it. It's really, really easy to drink. I get to control the proof of how strong I want it. But you can make this cocktail with any apple moonshine you find, any apple pie moonshine you find, any apple whiskey you find would work for this. I created this moonshine for this cocktail, so it is the perfect pairing. I am aware that y'all don't have this, and I don't think I provided that recipe because that one's kind of like my thing. I like to be able to make it just me so that I can then send it to people and it's a little more special. Not because I'm selfish with my recipes, I just like it to be special. But I have made this with just straight whiskey in replacing the moonshine, or I've made it with like Applejack is really nice. You can use an apple brandy. I like to stay somewhere in the apple range, but let's not go crazy and go 99 apples. That's not even close to where you want to be. So if you don't have my moonshine, go for apple moonshine, apple pie moonshine, Laird's Applejack, any apple whiskey, preferably not one that's overly sweet, and then an apple brandy. Any of those, Calvados, any of those would be fantastic. So those are my recommendations on what spirit to use for this particular cocktail. And I like to call it the Knotty Apple. If you choose to do this with, I don't know, a pear brandy, then it would be the Knotty Pear. Okay, just swap out the fruit, simple. Fair warning, this has a lot of alcohol in it. This is a sipper, a slow sipper. It's a very large cocktail. You could absolutely make this per my ratios and then divide it into two. A lot of the hefty cocktails I make are because I am sitting watching a long movie, don't want to get back up. I serve them large and in charge because that's just how I do things. But this has a lot of alcohol in it. So please proceed carefully if you would like to make the Knotty Apple. So for the Knotty Apple, we are going to use 3 ounces of apple moonshine. I know what I said. I said 3 ounces, guys. So that's 1.5, just so you guys don't think I'm jipping you. That's 3. All right, so 3 ounces of apple moonshine. And then we're going to use Averna. Averna is a really nice Sicilian Amaro, and it has like these really rich, dark caramel kind of tones to it. It's kind of bitter. It's also sweet. It is a liqueur, but it adds depth, and that is kind of where I'm going with this cocktail. I want it to be sweet. This is kind of a dessert cocktail, but I also want it to be deep and rich and make you sit on it and feel like you should be surrounded by like dusty books and great music or good conversation and cigars, whatever it is that makes you feel like you could plan heists. That's what this cocktail is for, to plan Christmas heists in a study. That's what this is. So we're going to use a 1/2 ounce of Averna. Now, if you don't have Averna, I have tried this with a few other similar Amaros. I've used Montenegro. It works nice. Montenegro has more citrus, more eucalyptus in the notes. It works, it just changes the cocktail. And Amaros are very intense in flavor. So if you do swap out the Amaro, it will alter this cocktail almost into an entirely new one. The moonshine, not so much, because yes, I make this moonshine. I concocted it specifically for this cocktail, but it's apple, it's sweet, it's tasty, it's smooth. So if you have any of those qualities in whatever apple spirit you're using, it'll be fine. Now the Amaro is going to change the game. If you selected something like a Campari, which has grapefruit and like really bitter citrus notes, then that would be an entirely different cocktail. You have a bunch of brown spirits that are Amaros. I mentioned Montenegro. I'm using Averna. You have things like Chinar, which is artichoke based. You have things like Amaro Braulio, which is really herbal. You have Fernet, which has a whole host of herbs in there. Jaeger, like there's all different kinds of darker herbal, caramelly kind of dark Amaro spirits you could use. I just really like Averna. You don't have to use it, but it will make it a different cocktail if you don't. So that's my Averna soapbox for the day. Then we're going to use a 1/2 ounce of allspice simple syrup. Put that in there. And then I'm going to use some apple juice just to kind of repeat that apple flavor all the way through the cocktail. Now, if you can find unsweetened, that is definitely my preference. This is already kind of a sweet cocktail. I've got the apple moonshine, which the one I make and most of the ones on the market are a little bit sweetened, if not a lot sweetened. Mine is just kind of sweetened. Averna, even though it's bitter and bold, it does have a sugar content. It's a liqueur. And then I already added in a simple syrup. And I know that sounds like a lot of sugar, but it balances out really nicely flavor-wise as long as your apple juice isn't extremely sweet. So I usually try to find an unsweetened or a lightly sweetened, unfiltered apple juice because it has a really bright, real, fresh flavor to it without all of that crazy additives, fake apple juice box type of flavor. So this is my, as you can tell, it's unfiltered. It's very cloudy. I also like that because I think it makes the cocktail look more interesting. But if you just have apple juice, just use apple juice and then use your simple syrup sparingly. So we're going to add 2 whole ounces of unfiltered, lightly sweetened apple juice. And if you're able to find cardamom tinctures, or not cardamom tinctures, cardamom bitters, that would be the equivalent of what I have in my hand right now. I'm very fortunate to have a really cool friend by the name of Agostino Perone, and he lives in London, and we crossed paths, I think 4 to 6 years ago now. It's been a very long time. Agostino, if you're out there, hello, I miss you. You're doing wonderful things. His bar just won one of the, I think it was best bar in the world, in the 50 top bars of the world, which is very well deserved. He is a master of things all bar, especially martinis. He's made the only martini I've ever really liked, including the ones I've made. But he made these cardamom tinctures and let me have this bottle years ago, and I hold on to it for dear life. It is amazing. The cardamom bitters I've seen on the market will get the job done. They just won't remind you of my friend Agostino. But then again, you probably haven't met him yet. So when you do, make sure you ask him about his cardamom tincture. I'm going to use 2 drops. If you're using the bitters, use 2 dashes. And then I'm going to add some ice, and we're going to shake. And if you are making this along with me, or if you plan to make this later, just know that the amount of liquid in this shaker is much more than the other cocktails. So it's going to be a heftier amount to shake. So just make sure you keep a really nice tight hold on your shaker. And if you aren't secure with your skills with your shaker, just use a mason jar. Screw that lid on, shake the absolute crap out of it, and you should be good to go. We're going to shake this one for about 15 seconds. We really want to get those flavors diluted and all married together, okay? It's always like weird when I'm like, okay, let's shake. And then it's just like this awkward, watch me move my arm around for like the next several seconds. But I'm hoping you're here for it. I'm here for it because it produces a lovely cocktail. But I'm serving this in a trifle glass for a couple of reasons. One, it's kind of a dessert cocktail. 2, trifles are very much a London or England specialty. And I'm making this with the tinctures that my London colleague has made for me. And it just looks cool, I think. But if you don't think that, you can put that in any glass. You can drink it out of the shaker for all I care, as long as you want to drink it. I'm going to strain this over to ice, so I'm filling my glass with ice. Now, if you happen to follow the Pandemic Pinup account on Instagram, that's where I post all of the recipes and the pictures of these recipes, so you have like that visual aid to find what you're looking for. And I usually post those throughout the week. I try to get like one on Monday, one Tuesday, one Wednesday, but sometimes pandemic life gets in the way. And being a pandemic pinup, I stay busy. So it doesn't always get there. But if you see this photo, I did take this previously this week, and it will be on pebble ice. That is my definite recommend to serve this. Pebble ice is king. I love pebble ice. If you have access to it, use it. If you don't, you just think you don't, because they sell it at Sonic and you can buy just their ice. That's my other soapbox for the day. But yes, strain it over fresh ice. I like to garnish this with spices. Again, that aromatic note. I like the whole dried appearance of garnishes in the wintertime. It just feels like, to me, like it speaks to the season. And then you could also use a little bit of lemon. Lemon complements the Averna really, really well. So when I make this, I sometimes will do an express of a lemon peel so that the oil sit on top, that aroma hits you in the face. And then it just looks pretty because you have that contrast of yellow and brown. But now I'm just doing brown on brown, which I don't find anything wrong with that, but that's probably because I'm also kind of biased. But yeah, guys, that is the Knotty Apple. and it is so tasty. Oh my gosh. I could just drink these all day and get into so much trouble, hence the name. It's really good. Yeah. Like I said, be careful. The cocktail is really good, goes down really easy, but it will kick you in the teeth if you're not careful. It's boozy. So boozy in a good way. I'm really excited about drinking this cocktail after this class. But that is all I have for you guys today. That is part 3 of our 12 cocktails of Christmas. A few updates. Next week we'll be doing the last installment next Sunday. We'll have 3 more, and that'll finalize the 12 cocktails of Christmas. If you need more Christmas cocktail recipes outside of the 12 that I'm doing, I have another selection of 12 cocktails of Christmas that is currently being posted on the Cocktail and Sons Instagram account, one a day up until Christmas Eve. And then a very talented bartender by the name of Katie Renshaw is doing what I am expecting to be absolutely amazing 12 Cocktails of Christmas series that I think she said is going to go live on the 14th on her Instagram account. So find her on there, Katie Renshaw. She's amazing. If you can't find her, let me know. I will find her handle. I don't remember it off the top of my head. But she makes some absolutely marvelous creations that would make any person jealous. So tune in, and if you do that, you'll have 36 cocktails to choose from on Christmas. I don't know if you need that many options, but if you think you do, they're out there. You can find them. But thank you very much for joining me, as always. I enjoy the people that come in, the people that don't come in, the people that sneak around on Facebook and watch. But stay tuned. I will be posting pictures and recipes later this week, as well as the flyer for next week's class in case you want to mix along. Until then, enjoy your holiday season. Stay safe out there and stay warm. It's really cold here today. But yeah, cheers, guys.